The whistling sound coming from the window frame was proof once again of how unbearably cold it was outside. Lying on his bed, Ethan sat up and curiously approached the glass. The houses covered in snow and the old Chevrolet cars parked on the narrow streets of the small town were almost invisible beneath the white layer. There wasn't a single soul outside. The snow was falling so fast that he feared if he went out, no one would ever find him again. He decided to stay inside, but if it weren't out of necessity, he would have run away from that house without ever looking back. For many people, a warm family home is a haven, but for him, it was a prison. Ethan Miller, newly 16, was a young boy caught in an identity crisis. Born into a lower middle-class family in a small American town, he felt misunderstood by everyone around him and kept his distance from people. But his loneliness didn't stop there. He carried a truth that was never welcomed in the family he was born into. He was only 16, but the rhythm of his heart whispered a melody that didn't match the other boys' games. When he watched the boys playing ball on the street, a strange warmth would rise inside him, followed by shame and fear. He had a secret no one could know. He'd realized it in those confusing moments of discovering himself. His heart wanted something beyond ordinary friendship. This feeling, hidden even from his friends and family, flowed silently through him, like a buried creek under the snowy streets. It was quiet, but constant, and now it had become too heavy to carry. He wondered, what would his family say if they ever found out? He had a pretty good guess. They wouldn't be happy, but how angry would they be? He couldn't know for sure. Ethan's family was like a painting trapped in its own frame, unable to move beyond the limits of their small-town life. His father, Thomas Miller, was a man of sharp eyes and sharper words. For him, discipline and obedience were sacred. He'd built his children's futures from his own dreams, blind to the gentler edges of emotion. His mother, Laura Miller, was the quiet heartbeat of the house, her trembling hands revealing the weight she carried. She showed love through food and small gestures, though frustration often strangled her words. His sister, Grace, had long since learned to adapt. She'd buried her own dreams, her smile stretched thin between duty and silence. She sensed her brother's difference but avoided his eyes, afraid of what she might see there. The walls of that little house echoed with both love and repression, hope and silence, and every echo deepened Ethan's confusion. For a fleeting moment, he thought of telling them, then immediately shook the thought away. To share it with his family would be signing his own death warrant. How could he ever say, I like boys, I love Liam? Would they understand? His mother would burst into tears. His father would explode with rage. He could already see it, standing by the window. He watched snowflakes melt against the glass and turn into tiny droplets inside him. A storm raged, his heart pounded, his lips trembled. Liam wasn't with him, but his phone was. He unlocked the screen, and with shaking fingers, typed a message. I know you're tired of living like this in secret, but my mom, my dad, how could I ever tell them? What am I going to do? A few seconds later, the reply came, a soft light through the storm. Liam, don't rush it. Tell them only when you're ready. I'm here. I understand you. Ethan gripped the phone tightly. His fingers trembled as if frozen. The snow tapped against the glass. The white blanket outside muffled all sound. Inside him was both fear and warmth. Liam's words were as sharp as the cold outside, yet they spread like heat through his chest. Liam was with him, not in body, but in spirit, in those glowing words on a screen. Ethan took a deep breath. In the next room, Grace sat quietly reading, but her heart somehow felt her brother's unrest. She was waiting, though she didn't know for what. Ethan walked slowly down the hall and stopped at her door. Grace, he whispered. She looked up. The understanding in her eyes shone like light in the dark. Yes, Ethan. He hesitated, the words catching in his throat, and then they came out, trembling. Can we talk for a bit? Grace frowned slightly, curious but gentle. What's wrong, Ethan? He took a deep breath, lowered his gaze, and whispered, I like boys. I love Liam. Grace froze. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. It was as if the world had shifted under her feet. She stammered, What are you saying, Ethan? This is serious. And, Dad, Mom, have you thought about what they'll do if they hear this? Ethan nodded, voice breaking. I know. I'm scared, but hiding it hurts even more. Grace paced the room, hands over her face. Fear and worry filled her eyes. After a long silence, she turned toward him again. Her voice trembled, but there was tenderness now. Ethan, I'm not saying I don't understand you. I know your heart is telling you this. I'm worried. Okay. You have to be careful. Ethan smiled faintly. Her fear was still there, but beneath it, love. Grace sighed. You're brave for telling me, but don't tell Mom and Dad yet. Not now. Just talk to me, all right? Ethan met her gaze. The storm inside him began to quiet. Her fear hadn't erased her care. It had revealed its silence settled between them in the cold morning light of that small, snowy town. Grace's eyes brought warmth to his heart. Okay, Ethan whispered. I won't tell them yet, but one day I'll have to. I can't keep hiding forever. Grace's face tightened again. Ethan, they'll never understand. Dad will get angry. And Mom, she'll break. Are you ready for that? Ethan looked down, but this time there was resolve in his voice. I know. I'm afraid, but hiding myself will destroy me even more. I can't keep pretending. Maybe they'll hate it. Maybe they won't understand, but someday they have to. And when that day comes, I want to be ready. Grace didn't answer for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. I understand you, Ethan. I'm scared, but I hope it'll be okay. Ethan smiled faintly. Her fear, her warning, they felt like guidance in the dark. Thanks, Grace. I'll wait, but I'll tell them when I'm ready. The room fell silent again. In the distance, the snow kept falling, soft, relentless. Inside that fragile silence, for the first time, Ethan felt seen. Ethan spent the rest of the day in his room. He stared out the window, watching the snow blanket the town. He read Liam's messages over and over again. The conversation with Grace still echoed in his mind, her worry, her warning, her love. When his mother's voice called from the kitchen that evening, his pulse quickened. Ethan, dinner's ready. Come to the table, please. He took a deep breath and left his room. The hallway felt longer than usual. His heart pounded in his chest as if warning him. When he opened the door to the dining room, his father was already seated upright, stern, his gaze heavy. His mother placed the food quietly on the table. No one spoke. The ticking of the clock filled the silence. Ethan sat down. The smell of the meal mixed with tension. He tried to eat, but his hands trembled. As he reached for the bread, the fork slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a metallic clatter. The sound tore through the silence like a knife. Thomas's head snapped up. His voice came sharp, controlled, but deadly. Ethan, are you out of your mind? Watch what you're doing. You're not a child anymore. Do I have to teach you how to eat at 16? Ethan's eyes dropped to the floor. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but Thomas wasn't done. His anger had been waiting for a spark. Didn't mean to. In this house, there is no didn't mean to. Start paying attention. Boy, you're not 3 years old anymore. Ethan's breath quickened, his vision blurred, his heart pounded harder. This was the moment, and suddenly, the words burst out of him like breaking glass. If I'm not a child anymore, then I can make my own choices. Dad, I love Liam. For a second the whole world froze. Thomas didn't move. His face turned crimson. His jaw clenched. What did you just say? His voice was low, deadly. Ethan's lips trembled. Tears filled his eyes. I said, I love Liam. Liam. Thomas stood up, his chair screeching backward. Who the hell is Liam? A boy? A boy. Ethan nodded. Double quotes. Yes. The table shook as Thomas slammed his fist down. Don't you dare say another word. Laura gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her face turned pale as paper. Tears welled up before she could even speak. No, Ethan, she whispered, her voice cracking. How could you say that? Each word came out broken, wrapped in fear and heartbreak. How am I supposed to protect you now? How do I understand this? How do I survive this? Her sobs filled the room, raw and desperate. Thomas took a step forward. His eyes burned with fury. You will not bring shame into my house. Do you hear me? Ethan backed away, trembling. Dad, please. Grace jumped to her feet. Dad, stop it. Don't touch him. Thomas's rage was blinding. He moved toward Ethan again, his arm half raised. Grace rushed forward, trying to block him, and in one terrible, clumsy second, everything shattered. Thomas's arm swung out, not to hit her, but to push her aside, and Grace stumbled. Her body hit the corner of the table, then the floor. For a heartbeat, there was only silence, then a dull thud, then Ethan froze, Thomas froze. Laura screamed. Grace. Blood streaked down Grace's temple, a small, terrible line of red against her pale skin. Her eyes widened, unfocused. Ethan fell to his knees beside her. Grace, Grace, please. Thomas staggered backward, as if waking from a nightmare. No, no, no. Grace, get up, please, honey, get up. Laura dropped beside them, hands shaking uncontrollably. Thomas, do something. Please, do something. Thomas pressed his hands against the wound, tears streaming down his face. Grace, talk to me, please, talk to me. But her eyes had already begun to dim. Her lips parted, a breath escaped. Laura's scream tore through the house. No, no, Grace, please. Thomas held her in his arms, sobbing like a broken man. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Grace, please, open your eyes. But Grace was gone. The room fell silent. The snow outside muffled everything. Only the sound of Laura's cries remained, and Ethan's whisper, "It's my fault." He stared at his sister's body, his tears falling onto the floor. Everything inside him collapsed. Fear, love, guilt, everything. The warmth left the house that night. Only cold remained. Time blurred after that night. The house, once filled with voices, now echoed only with the sound of grief. The walls seemed to hold their breath. Grace's funeral came under a heavy gray sky. The entire town was silent. Even the wind felt like it mourned. Snow fell slowly, thick flakes gathering on the ground as though trying to hide what had happened. Thomas and Laura stood side by side, yet worlds apart. They clung to each other in trembling silence. No words, only guilt and exhaustion. Ethan stood a few steps away, unable to move closer. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. He watched as the coffin was lowered, the white lily placed on top, and felt as if part of him was being buried too. But ceremony ended, people left, but the house never returned to life again. Days turned into weeks. The silence inside was unbearable. Laura's cries would start in the middle of the night and end in whispers. Thomas barely spoke. When he did, his voice carried no strength, only regret. No one blamed him out loud, but they all knew. Ethan stayed in his room, motionless for hours. He replayed every second, the confession, the scream, the sound of the fall. Each time it ended the same way, Grace's eyes fading away. The guilt was too heavy to bear. He felt trapped between walls that whispered her name. 2 weeks later, he could take it no longer. He packed a small bag, some clothes, a few books, a picture of Grace, and the worn photograph of Liam he kept hidden in a notebook. He zipped the bag without looking around. When he glanced out the window, the world was still white. The snow hadn't stopped since that night. He whispered to himself, I can't stay here. Grace is gone, and I have to go. He opened the door quietly, stepped into the cold. The house didn't try to stop him as he walked down the street. His breath turned to mist. The town was silent, asleep beneath its frozen grief. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to keep walking. He headed toward Chicago, toward Liam. Chicago, the city lights were blinding after the grayness of home. Neon signs, car horns, voices, all of it crashed against his numb heart. He walked with his bag slung over one shoulder, his shoes wet from the melting snow. Every step felt heavy. But he didn't stop. At last, he saw it, the small cafe where Liam worked. Through the window, the light looked warm, golden. Ethan stood outside for a long time, unable to go in. His hand trembled on the door handle. Then he took a breath and entered. The bell above the door rang softly. Inside, everything smelled of coffee and cinnamon. Liam was wiping a table, head down. When he looked up, his eyes widened. Ethan? Ethan couldn't speak. His lips trembled. He set the bag on the floor. There was no smile, only exhaustion. Liam slowly approached him and placed a hand on his shoulder. You're here. Ethan nodded, tears already forming. Liam didn't ask anything. He didn't have to. He simply whispered, I'm here. Ethan lowered his head and cried quietly, for Grace, for home, for everything lost. It wasn't salvation. It was survival. Outside, Chicago's lights glittered like distant stars, but inside, only two figures remained holding on to each other in the warm dimness of the cafe. For the first time in weeks, Ethan wasn't entirely alone. 5 years later, 5 years had passed since that night. Thomas still woke up each morning with the same ache. Grace's absence, Ethan's silence. The house had long been emptied of laughter. He tried to move on, but the guilt followed him like a shadow. He saw Ethan's face in every reflection. He heard Grace's voice in every quiet room. One winter morning, unable to bear it any longer, he packed a small bag. He left a note for Laura and got into his car. He drove east toward Chicago. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, lined with the ghosts of memory. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for. Forgiveness? Maybe or just a sign that his son was alive. He spent days searching in shelters, cafes, libraries, anywhere a young man might go. No one knew Ethan. One evening, drained and hopeless, he wandered into a small cafe on a quiet street that had smelled faintly of coffee and cinnamon, the same as before. He sat down at a corner table, and then saw it, a framed photograph on the counter. Ethan smiling. A vase of wilted flowers stood beside it. Thomas's breath caught. He rose, trembling, and walked closer. The photo showed Ethan holding a cup of coffee, laughing at the camera. But the little ribbon tied around the frame told another story. He reached out a shaking hand and touched the glass. His eyes filled with tears. A voice came from behind him, soft, unsure. You knew him. Thomas turned. Standing there was a young man, kind eyes, tired face. I did. Thomas stammered. He was my son. The young man, Liam, froze. His lips parted in disbelief. Then his own eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, he whispered. He died a month ago. It was an accident. He was driving to pick up supplies. There was a pedestrian crossing the road. He swerved to avoid them. The car went off the bridge. By the time they reached him, it was too late. Thomas's knees almost gave out. He covered his mouth, sobbing silently. Liam's tears fell too. They stood there, facing each other, two men connected by one loss. Then Thomas reached out, hesitantly, and pulled him into an embrace. Liam didn't resist. They cried together, shoulders shaking. Outside, the city went on, as usual. Cars, lights, people. Inside, time stopped. Two broken hearts clung to the only thing they shared, Ethan's memory. Thomas looked again at the photograph, his voice cracking to a whisper. Forgive me, son. Liam sat beside him. Neither spoke again. They didn't need to, because at that moment, in that small golden cafe filled with the scent of coffee and snow, silence said everything.